Hello, everyone. My name is Clentus, and welcome to my podcast. And please, if you are listening, where podcasts are listened to, welcome. And if you are watching me from YouTube, hello, I'm Clentus, and I highly appreciate your support of the last video. I noticed a significant hike in my views. Yes, they are still quite small, but I celebrate every win. I'm not going to call it small or big win. As long as it's a win, I am all good. And I'm so appreciative of those that are also liking. I also noticed that some of you are just watching the videos, but you're not subscribing. So please do me a big favor by subscribing because I got more of these sort of topics that I'm bringing to your attention. Most of these things that I'm talking about, guys, is stuff that is on my mind. It's not something that I sat down and I researched and then I fact checked and did all these things that needs to be done in order to come up or to speak about some serious topics. This is something that is in my noggin. This is something that, or these are the things that I'm thinking about, and I feel like, okay, to whom do I tell these things to? Because at the end of the day, I am still a recluse. I don't have, now I do have friends, let me not lie. Prior to the people that I'm going to be talking about, I just did not have friends at all. I was all by myself. Even at work, I minimize the in and out of other people. I always choose the most neglected part of a building or office where there's less or no traffic at all so that I can be all by myself with my own thoughts and do my work. So, again, a disclaimer, none of what I am saying is a fact. Some are a fact. If I may just log my screen before it starts interchanging the what do you call this, the quality of the video. So these are my experiences as well, not necessarily experience but more my observations. And as some of you are watching on YouTube, you can see the title of with this video podcast. I titled it "Why African Americans Are Moving to Africa, RANT." So this podcast is going to be mostly about me just ranting about some few things that I'm observing that are happening with with our brothers and sisters that are moving from the US into Africa. Number one, love it. I find so much joy and such fulfillment when I see our African American brothers coming to Africa, coming back home, basically. And when they fall in love with us, when they love the type of people we are and what we have built for ourselves, it validates all the hard work that we've been doing since the end of apartheid in South Africa. Most of the things that I'm going to be talking about here is relative to South Africa because this is my country and this is the only experience that I have in Africa, even though Africa has 54 other countries or 53 other countries apart from South Africa. So I can't speak for them. I don't know what their psychology or psychic is about than the one that I understand, which is a South African psychic. And I will speak from that point of view. Yes, I will delve into the greater Africa, but on the basis of what I know or I have heard about those certain countries. So let's start from the beginning. So, as I said, why African Americans are moving to Africa. That is a very interesting question, an important question to ask, and also answered by the relative people, or the relevant people, not relative, the relevant people that are coming, and they are talking and they are answering these questions, and we are understanding why they are moving to Africa. We'll get into that, and we'll also sort of correlate why South Africans get along so well with African Americans and why African Americans, when they come to South Africa, they feel so at home and so understood and so integrated into our society. We'll get to that as well as I move on with this podcast. So, guys, it all started in the 16th to the 19th century with the transatlantic slave trade. So, if you don't know what is the Atlantic trade, if you don't know what is the transatlantic slave trade, it is where Africans from West Africa mostly were being kidnapped by Europeans and Americans, and taking them to the Americas to enslave them, and basically to build what you see today as the United States of America. If you go to Europe, what you see being Europe today, all those countries and their successors were built on the back of these slaves that were stolen from Africa. Yes, there are some kind of other factors that played a role. That is not for me to speak about, because slave trade is not part of South African history, because the slave traders, they never came down to South Africa and kidnapped Africans or South Africans to the Americas and Europe and the islands. So the transatlantic slave trade, as I said, it ended around the 19th century, where slave itself was abolished, and it was considered or declared as inhumane. So, if you are interested to know where these slaves were taken from or stolen from, they were taken from the countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, even Cameroon, even as far as Kenya. They did not get down to my country, which is South Africa. And so these enslaved people were taken to what is called doors of no return. And these doors of no return were situated or are situated in the country of Ghana and Senegal. So as you can tell with the name door of no return, these people were taken and they were gone forever, hundreds of years. And in the hundreds of years while they were on those other side of the world, they were being lied to. Propaganda upon propaganda upon propaganda about where they come from. So much so that even the slaves themselves, or what I would call the descendants of slave, no longer quite see Africa the way they should or ought to see Africa. For example, a Russian, a Chinese, a German, or even an American, when they leave America, or when they leave Russia, or they leave Europe, they still consider Europe or Russia as their motherland. Chinese will still consider China as their motherland. But African Americans, most of them or some of them, don't consider themselves as Africans. There's a huge debate on that. Once again, all that comes from the propaganda that they've been fed by their slave masters and the mainstream media about Africa being depicted in the most horrendous of ways. But I digress, or I came too forward, because I'm still on the history of African Americans before I get to my rant. So, if we can fast forward a little bit into the 1960s, where African Americans formulated the civil rights movement, where they were fighting for equal rights, equal treatment, a job with job opportunities, and also could live anywhere and everywhere they wanted to. So unfortunately, there was this man called Jim Crow who came up with some ridiculous laws in the South of the US, where he created a law of segregation, where African Americans were supposed to be living somewhere where nowhere near where the white people were, and that they were not getting the same opportunities as white people were getting, even though they were under one roof called the United States of America. So Black Americans, all they were fighting for is for the same rights that the white Americans were enjoying since the inception of the USA. Fortunately, this was a fight that Black Americans did win. However, did things change? Well, not necessarily changed, even though or despite Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream about the future of the United States where everybody came together as one and moved in the same direction, where everybody was benefiting and reaping from the success of the United States of America. Unfortunately, Black people were still being treated differently from the white Americans. Actually, as a matter of fact, the white supremacy or the systemic racism in America kind of like doubled down. So much so that they came up with a different way of segregation in a form of gentrification, where they would move Black people from one area, or they would sort of turn the area into an an inaffordable place to live, so much so that Black people will feel like, okay, life here is getting way too expensive, and then they move out, and then more and more of white people move into that area for whatever reason. So gentrification is a form of segregation as far as I am concerned, and the white America doubled down on that, and that continued to frustrate Black Americans. Just a side note, I find it rather interesting that the United States considers Black Americans as African Americans, yet the United States of America, the entire continent, does not belong to the white Americans. They come from Europe. So you would assume that if Black people are African Americans, white people would be called European Americans. But I digress. So we have seen and heard, especially on the news, how Black Americans have been treated in their own country every single year in recent years, probably as far back as early 90s or mid 90s, you would hear that an African American has been shot down by a cop, killed. And the same cop that killed this Black person who was unarmed and posed no danger to the policeman walks free. No consequences. Why? Because the jury of his peers all happen to be the same race. And of course, as I think where I'm sitting, Black life really didn't matter as far as they were concerned. What mattered is the white cop and his safety. And some have even become celebrities. I remember, what's that guy who killed George Floyd? Was it George Floyd? Or Trayvon or something like that. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I think it was Trayvon Martin. That cop became a celebrity. His gun was even auctioned for millions of rands or millions of dollars. And interestingly, some other things that belongs to him were sold at auction, and he became a multimillionaire. This guy speaks on global stages. He gets invited. He's a celebrity. People ask for his autographs, all because he killed a Black teenager who posed no danger to him, but his crime was to wear a hoodie and walking the streets of America as a Black person. It is sad when you hear that Black Americans are being treated like nuisance in their own country. By the way, a country they never chose to be at. They were kidnapped from their own homes and brought to this place. And now they turn around and mistreat them, and yet the same people built what is the United States of America. I find that very interesting. So to fast forward a little bit more recent years, so in 2019, Ghana, the country Ghana, came up with an initiative that they called the Year of No Return. Basically, they were aiming or focusing on getting the African diasporans to come back to Africa. Come back to Africa to settle and also to invest. So it is clear that Ghana, realizing what was happening to African Americans and also knowing that most of these people that are being treated the way they are being treated, their forefathers were stolen from them. So a parent, when they see their child in pain, what they're going to do? Of course, they're going to open their arms and welcome them back home and treat them in a way that they will understand that they are still important and that they have a life and they have potential and opportunities to become something. So that is when Ghana came up with this initiative, the year of return in 2019. And this initiative was endorsed and promoted by Hollywood A-listers. These are black Hollywood A-listers like Will Smith, like Samuel L. Jackson, and Boris Cujo, many African Americans who were Hollywood stars came to Ghana in 2019. And as a result of that, many African Americans did go to the year of return in Ghana in 2019, and it was quite successful. And ever since then, Ghana also created what is called Afrochella, where African musicians take to the stage and entertain not only Ghanaians, but African Americans that flocking into Ghana and welcoming them home. And I believe right now they're even giving them dual citizenship. If you're African American and you are interested in becoming a Ghanaian citizen while you still hold your American citizenship, you were welcomed. And I think I've seen several videos where African Americans have actually taken up that offer from Ghana, from Sierra Leone, I think even Liberia, the Gambia, I think, as well as did I say Senegal? Yeah, Senegal, and other countries in Africa. So when we watch these things happening, of course, we've been very, very happy. I believe, I remember in 2019, even myself as a South African citizen, I was like, oh my goodness, this is great. I want to go to Ghana. I remember I was fighting so hard to save up some money to go and welcome the African Americans there in Ghana. Never once did I think that African Americans would look in our direction. By our direction, I'm talking South Africa. And the spotlight was not on us. The spotlight was on Ghana. The spotlight was on Tanzania. The spotlight was on Nigeria, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, I think even Kenya. Never once did we think as South Africans that the spotlight will shine on us. But I, once again, fast forwarded too early in this conversation. So even though that the transatlantic slave trade did not come to South Africa, as South Africans, we still felt the pain of the Black Americans whenever we watched the news when George Floyd was gunned down. I can still remember him saying, I can't breathe. Every time I hear that, it brings pain in my heart. Have you ever had somebody try to starve you of oxygen before? The pain when you try to tell the person you are killing me and they wouldn't stop. This white man continued with his knee on his neck, cut off oxygen till he died. That's painful. As a South African and as an African, to watch a fellow black person treated like lesser of a human being. So, like I said, even though the transatlantic slave trade did not come here, however, South Africans had their own Jim Crow in the form of Verwoerd, who architected what is called apartheid, which is segregation, where black people were taken to less favorable areas of the country, their land stripped of them, their properties and possessions stolen by the apartheid government, and on top of that, gave black people crumbs of the economy. Basically, not even crumbs of the economy, nothing. We were left to our own device, and while they were ripping all the benefits that came with the soil of South Africa, that is our natural resources, that is our soil, that is our land, everything that dignified us as black people were taken away from us by the apartheid government. And if you line that with Jim Crow laws, kind of like aligns. So that is why when the spotlight came and hit South Africa And suddenly now we are seeing an influx of African Americans coming to South Africa. To us, is like, whoa. And on top of that, why it's happening, because I would think that when we saw Ghana getting all this attention and Nigeria and all these other countries were getting attention from African Americans, I don't think we even considered ourselves to be a destination for them. We continued minding our own business. We continued building our own country. We continued doing what South Africans do, because one thing I can tell you about us South Africans, we don't migrate and we also don't immigrate. If we do migrate, it's our migration is within the country, where one moves from one province to another, either for greener pastures. If it's not greener pastures, maybe because of health reasons. It's not health reasons, it will be because of marriage. If it's not because of marriage, it's because of business opportunities. If it's not business opportunities, it's basically for leisure. That is what we do. But immigrating to other countries, that is not a Black South African thing. I can even challenge you, wherever you are outside of the African continent, to go to a block in your city, in your community, and find me one black South African. I'm not saying Black South Africans don't move out of South Africa. If a Black South African moves out of South Africa, it's because of job transferring them to the US or to the UK or to Australia. It was not something where a Black South African sat down and said, okay, I'm packing up my bags, I'm leaving, and I'm going to seek greener pastures in the US or in Europe or down under. It's usually job. So I challenge you to go find me a South African in your community versus finding me other Africans. And when I say other Africans, I'm talking Africans that are coming from the African continent. You will see that Black South Africans, we don't travel. We don't go anywhere. For a Black South African to go on a vacation, we go to either Durban, which is in South Africa, east of the country, or we go to Cape Town, which is south of the country, or we go to Port Elizabeth, which is southeast or east of South Africa. That is our vacation. We don't pack up for Dubai. We don't pack up for Zanzibar. We don't pack up for Miami. We don't pack up for Ibiza. Or is it Ibiza? We don't pack up for Italy or anywhere. We pack up to go on vacation in our own country. Why do we do that? Is because we are proud of what we've built since apartheid died. We are enjoying our country. We are enjoying building our country with each other. So now when we see African Americans coming in, we are like, great. So that means we can put together our strengths and build ourselves, each other, and the country. So for us, we are happy that they are getting away from the pain that we watch on CNN, BBC, SABC, and all the other news channels. When one escapes that pain, that's a celebration for us. And we will do everything and anything to ensure that we open our arms as wide as possible, our doors, our homes, everything to welcome them home and feel at home. We smother them with love. We smother them with warmth. We smother them with Ubuntu. We smother them with everything and anything that will make sure that they will think twice going back home. Like, this is where you belong, and we are here to give you a piece of us. As long as you are here with good intentions, South Africans will welcome you as long as you have good intentions. The moment you go off track, then you will get yourself in trouble with South Africans, because South Africans don't like it when you break the law. South Africans don't like it when you take advantage of us. South Africans don't like it when you speak ill of us. South Africans don't like it when you just take advantage, period, in any form. But if you are here with good intentions, trust and believe me, we will love you and we will make sure that you feel at home. And if anybody gives you trouble, we come and we will make sure that that person will never give you trouble again. As a matter of fact, they will apologize and then join us in making sure that your stay it is enjoyable, it is satisfying, and that you also progress in life. And the other thing that I've also noticed about us South Africans and Black Americans is that we share almost a similar background. Them with Jim Crow, us with Verwoerd and apartheid. We get along like house on fire. We understand each other. We hear each other and we are enjoying each other. So much so that I myself, the recluse me, have built amazing friendships. Amazing friendships. There are African Americans who are currently living in South Africa. They came to South Africa for a visit, fell in love with the country and us, went back, came back, and now they are living here. And I never thought in a million years that I would be a friend. Not because I'm thinking, oh, why would I be a friend with an African? No. I never thought, number one, that African Americans will ever find a home here. Yes, there have been African Americans in the past, because I have met a lot of them that came to South Africa, but they came to South Africa because of either on a mission, like a church mission, or they will come to South Africa because of a job, and after that they leave. It's not something that intentionally on their own they packed up from the US and moved here. There are other African Americans who have been living in South Africa since the 90s. Some have married South Africans, have children with South African women and men, and they've become South Africans. So now we are having this spotlight where people are like, I'm going to South Africa. And these people, some of them are my friends. And slowly but surely, I'm also getting out of my shell. I'm getting out of my shell and I'm ensuring that these guys, as they are here, they feel welcomed, that whatever they want, I try to provide. I am not a wealthy person. As a matter of fact, I live below the no, not exactly I live below the poverty line. I just, maybe I'm okay. Let me put it that way. But I ensure that if they need me, I'm there. That's the type of friend that I am. If you need me, I'm there. You need this help, I'm there to help. And like I said, I'm getting out of my shell. They have helped me get out of my shell. I find myself out on a weekend, things that I never used to do in consecutive weeks, and I find myself laughing and having fun and letting my hair down and interacting with human beings, and that spotlight shining on us has developed other things about us South Africans with our African American brothers and sisters. And I'm loving it. I'm loving every moment with these people. And I believe they're also loving every moment with us. And we are going to build something great together as far as I can see. Interestingly, South African schools or some South African schools, I'm not sure, maybe I'm speaking from a point of me going to a private school, high school, where we were taught about transatlantic slave trade. And I know a lot about that topic. And I think as well, this also helped with how we interact with each other, South Africans and the African Americans. And I also noticed that there are other African diasporans that are also coming in: British, Canadian, Hawaiian. I think there were even some Latin black people coming to South Africa and also some parts of Africa. And we are having a wonderful time together. I have to say that. We are having a great time. There are other African Americans that are coming into South Africa because I do comment on YouTube videos. Some felt that I'm probably the right person to interact with and hang out with when they get here. I don't know. Maybe I'm just blowing my own horn here, but I think my friends who are African Americans living here probably have said something to them about me, and so now they feel comfortable to interact with me, and I'm loving it. I really am loving this. And what is bringing the greatest joy for most South Africans? I mean, I am not just speaking, guys. If you want to prove what I'm saying or disprove what I'm saying, go to African American YouTubers that have come to South Africa and watch the comment section where South Africans are commenting. It will warm your heart. South Africans are loving people. They love our brothers and sisters. And I'm sure other African countries are just like South Africans. And they are welcoming our brothers and sisters from the US and making sure that they settle in well and that they see a conducive environment to become something themselves in your society, that they can raise children in your community and also assist or contribute in the building of your communities. That is the door we have opened for them. And it's just so unfortunate that our government here in South Africa is still a little bit, I'm not sure if they're ignorant or they're not aware or they're out of touch or just backward thinking. Because at this point in time, I think they should be following this on the same footsteps as Ghana and other West Africans when it comes to African Americans, starting with relaxing the visa restrictions and regulations, by also offering some kind of incentives to our brothers and sisters. And of course, we are not saying that relax everything to a point where you get unsavorable or undesirable personnels coming into South Africa or Africa for that matter, and then turn the country upside down and start having things that shouldn't happen. So, having said all what I have said, I must also say this: under no circumstances, South Africans and other Africans are under the illusion that Africa is perfect. As a matter of fact, Africa has huge challenges. And we are not sitting on our laurels either. We are busy working on eliminating and eradicating these challenges. It's taking time because our resources were stolen from us, and the people that stole our resources still refuse to return some of the ownership to us. And so we are working around that in improving ourselves, improving our countries, improving our communities and society. Yes, there is huge problem of crime. Yes, there is huge problem of scammers. Yes, there is huge problems of poverty. Yes, there is huge problems of underdevelopment and infrastructure. Yes, there is a huge lack of systems in place. Yes, Africa is frustrating and can be infuriating at the same time. We are not under any illusion on that. We know we have these challenges and we admit that we have these challenges. We do expect, however, that people that take interest in Africa, okay, again, let me speak about my country, South Africa. If you are going to take an interest in South Africa, I would encourage you to do two things. The first one, do your research. Any and every question that you have in your head about South Africa and its people and the challenges that South Africa has, read about it so that you can make an informed decision. The second thing that I'm going to ask you to do before you take any drastic decisions, visit. Pay South Africa a visit. There are 3 provinces that I would advise you. There are 9 all in all, but there are 3, and this is on a promotional side, by the way: Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. These 3 cities have different life experience. And you would see it yourself. So when you sit down and you plan a trip, your budget should cover these three cities. I would add the fourth one being Port Elizabeth, or it's called Gqeberha now these days, but it's Port Elizabeth, adding that fourth one. And your budget must involve these four, but majorly these three. And experience South Africa through the eye of these three cities. Then pay another visit to South Africa just to make sure that what you experienced before still remains the same. Then from there, you can sit down and start counting the cost of whether you think it's a good idea to move to South Africa or just go back and forth, buy properties, buy invest, and do all the other stuff that will benefit you economically. Go ahead. South Africans will not hold you or call you out on anything. You're just being wise. Now, where I am finding a little bit of a problem now, this is a rant. I am having an issue where an African American, again, I'm going to speak about South Africa, comes to South Africa because they watched a YouTube video of another African American who came to South Africa and had a great time, or even bought a house or came and settled in South Africa, and they thought, oh, I'm going to use them as a point of reference. I'm buying my ticket, boom, and they come to South Africa. And then they come across an unpleasant experience in a particular part of South Africa, or even in a city in South Africa. Cry and yes, it's painful when you have an unpleasant experience anywhere in the world. It is disheartening to watch that particular African American create a YouTube video and basically break loose and say things that are obvious that you should have known about this before coming to South Africa. That is why I'm going back to do your research, visit. These two are very important. Research and visit. So it's disheartening when you watch YouTube videos where an African American's house was broken into while they were asleep and everything was taken. You should have known about crime in South Africa. And I'm not saying that there's no crime where you come from, because there's no country that does not experience some sort of crime. There's crime everywhere. And this is not to say I'm excusing the level of crime that we have. I'm sick and tired of crime myself here in South Africa. Just in November, they broke into my house, stole my valuables. And yes, I was heartbroken. I was angry. I cried about it. And that was it. Because there's absolutely nothing I could do. The only thing I could do is go to the police, open a case. Unfortunately, we have police that I don't know where they are trained. That's all I can say. So it's very disheartening to watch an African American now creating a video and suddenly they turn exactly into that white YouTuber that came to South Africa for one purpose and one purpose only: to speak shit about South Africa. Why? Because this white YouTuber, observedly sitting back in the US, realizing that we are losing our black people. They are moving to Africa So, how do we stop this? They come to South Africa to visit and they create videos showing only the negatives. Only the negatives. They are continuing on National Geographics and all the other shows that was fed to you African Americans about Africa, how dark Africa is. It's riddled with crime, riddled with wars, riddled with diseases, riddled with barbarism, riddled with infrastructure underdevelopment. It is dark. There's no city. Africa is a country, which many African Americans to this very day in 2023 still think that Africa is a country, that Africa does not have a city, that Africans live in huts among animals. This is the propaganda that white Americans feed black people. And as a result of that, and it has worked because some African Americans don't want to consider themselves African. Ugh, why? I'm an American. And they will say it with their chest out. Fine, there's no problem with how you identify yourself. But the propaganda was shoved down their throats so much so that by hearing the word African as a description disgusts them. Some has gone as far as to say, no, we are Native Americans. Some have gone as far as saying, don't call me African American. I'm a Black American. Because of the propaganda. And now to have a fellow Black person that came to South Africa without doing the research and visiting the country, experience something unpleasant, now they've turned into this white YouTuber who has come to to decampaign South Africa, or decampaign Ghana, or decampaign Rwanda, or decampaign Tanzania, all because of an experience you had in one place. And when you speak about it, you don't mention this city or this town or this township or this rural area. You just say South Africa. So somebody who was thinking of visiting South Africa hears this. What do you think they're going to do? You just propagated and expanded the propaganda that South Africa is Johannesburg, or South Africa is Cape Town, or Africa is a country, not a continent with 54 countries. I'm not saying do not create a video and talk about your experience. Do so, because we are aware of our own weaknesses. We're also aware of our own demons. Like I said, we are working on them. You should have came in knowing that the possibility of experiencing something unpleasant was prevalent. Let me tell you something about Europeans, Asians, and South Americans. They are here in South Africa and other parts of Africa. These people have been here since probably the 1900s. These people have built wealth. They live in most expensive parts of South Africa or Africa. They own pieces of African economies. Probably in some other countries, the majority of the economy. South Africa, guilty party. And they know that these countries have challenges. Some of these people have experienced the most horrendous of unpleasant experiences. Did they sit down, create a YouTube video, cried and talked about their horrible experience and how they're packing their bags and leaving and never coming back? No. As a matter of fact, they were steadfast in basically clawing themselves into South Africa. Some of them even went into our townships and rural areas and built businesses, multi-million dollar businesses in the most dangerous parts of South Africa, some that I would not go to myself, but you will find them there. So now what does this tell an African? It's not that I'm thinking like that, but I've had conversation with some South Africans who said, when you come to Africa, you need to be tough. So what I'm hearing basically is that immediately an African American experiences something unpleasant, they show their weakness, how weak they are, and pack their bags and leave. That is an unpleasant truth if you think about it. You packing your bags because you had an experience, somebody stole your phone and you were gone. Yet a Chinese or a European had their house broken into, shot maybe one of the family members and killed them, and criminals ran away with their valuables, but they are still here and thriving. So, which brings me to the third point after the two. Once you have come to South Africa or anywhere in Africa, have a plan. What is your plan? What is that one plan that no matter what happens to you, whether it's good things or unpleasant things, will keep you rooted and adamant about staying in South Africa? Have a plan, whether that is a business plan or I don't know, whatever. That will motivate you. It will tell you that, okay, I know that was to be expected, but I still haven't changed my mind. I'm remaining here until I achieve my goals. Because that's what the Chinese, the Pakistanis, the Bangladeshis, the Europeans, the white Americans are doing. And they have a lot to show. Go to Cape Town. Their homes are in the hills overlooking the ocean. You come to Johannesburg, they live in posh suburbs. You go to Durban, they live in Mhlanga. Yet they've gone through what the rest of us in South Africa also have gone through. With the crime, load shedding, some systems just not working. They're here. They don't care. And what I love about my African American friends is that they're saying, fuck it, we will go through it together. That's what they said. We will go through it together. When I came here, I knew of these things. And if anything, one of them's phone, what you call iPhone 14 Pro, was stolen from him. He is the happiest chap I have ever seen in my life, despite his iPhone 14 Pro was stolen from him. Happy. And I was so worried. I was embarrassed. But it's like, why? Dude, this could happen anywhere. And he's adamant on being part of the South African society. And I love that. Yes, there are other infuriating things that they are experiencing. But I'm here to also educate them to say, wait, South Africans, I know us. I know our crime. I know our culture. I know our attitude. And I know our behavior. When somebody does something like, for example, you and I went to a shop and I asked, how much is this apple? And they say to me, it is 50 cents. And then an African American comes and say, how much is the apple? The same apple. And then the store owner says, oh, it's $1. I can tell you that's not a South African thing. South Africans did not grow up with prices unfixed. Whether you go to a formal store or an informal store, the prices are fixed. If they say this apple is 50 cents and an African American comes and they say a different price, That's not a South African that's selling you that item. Because a South African will tell you, oh, that apple is 50 cents. Secondly, my friend, who's an African American, went to a township, one of the townships that I have not visited yet because of reputation. He went there because he is South African like that. And he had kids dancing and singing around him and joyfully very happy to see him. And then I asked him when he released that video, did any of them ask you for money? He said no. And then I said, go to another African country and have the same number of kids. I'm telling you, all of them will have their hands stretched out asking for money. Asking for money is not a South African thing, especially when you're a visitor. Because we are taught at home that that is unacceptable. It's unacceptable that you will bother somebody else. You don't do that. With the exception, of course, of people that drink and smoke, but they do it to us as well as South Africans. Somebody that drinks or smoke will say, hey, to run there, I want to buy scaf. If you have, you give them. That's the only what I can admit to. But where a South African out of their own will just come up to you and say, hey, give me money because they hear your accent is different. That's not South African. That much I can tell you. The other thing that is infuriating that my friends, I keep educating them about is the fact that when we hear an American accent, we do not look at what can I benefit out of this African American. It goes back to what we are taught at home. South Africans are too proud. Too proud. There are people begging on the streets. They literally kneel in the traffic and beg for money. And some in the middle of the traffic, they are selling goods. None of them are South Africans. Because South African, the first thing that will come to mind is, you want my former classmates to see me doing this? No. There are delivery scooters in South Africa, Mr. Delivery or Uber Eats and stuff like that. South Africa is not a country of motorbikes. We don't ride motorbikes on our roads. It's not our thing. And the Mr. Deliveries that you, when you get your food, most of the time, these are foreign nationals, where they come from countries where motorbikes are that mode of transport. We take taxis, we take minibus combis when we travel from one place to another. Or we fly if it's a long distance, or take a train or a Greyhound bus or Intercape. That's how we do our thing. Same goes with our crime. I know our crime. And if an African American say, oh my goodness, I experienced this crime, the first thing I will say, that's not a South African who did that to you. It's the fact. So I'm just saying this to say that sometimes when you come here, I know you're experiencing in South Africa, but you must also know that South Africa is a melting pot with people from various parts of Africa residing here. And they come to South Africa with their psychology, with their mentality, behaviors, and an attitude. So if you had an experience where a person in South Africa looked at you nasty, a South African will never look at you nasty. So in your mind, you must say, okay, maybe that's not a South African. But you are experiencing this, and then we will take that stray bullet, unfortunately. Same goes with the say, Africans hate Black Americans. As South Africans, and I've spoken to so many South Africans, like, where is this thing coming from that we hate African Americans? And the facial expression I always get is like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, exactly. But apparently we hate African Americans, then it hits you that it's either one of two things or both. It's either there's a propaganda that was created that will discourage any African American of ever thinking of moving to Africa or even visiting Africa because you are hated there. And or because some of our fellow Africans go out and live in these countries like the US, and they get there and probably see things that they see, and then they utter unfavorable words to African Americans. And as a result, South Africans take the stray bullets and leaving us wondering, where did you get that we hate y'all? And my friends were surprised to see that that is not true. It's not true here. I don't know where or which part of African country where it's true. I don't know. But here, never. We will never hate on our African diasporans, wherever they may be. Never. As a matter of fact, South Africans look up to African Americans. We adopted the American culture, hip hop culture, R&B culture. We've adopted the lifestyle of African Americans that we see on television, by the way. That we see on television. We're only learning now as South Africans that many other things that we've seen on television do not reflect in real life for many African Americans. Because the first thing, the reason why people, the moment they hear an American accent, they start increasing the prices is because of the notion that Americans are rich. Why? Because of television, movies, music, and things like that. So I think as well, when you're an if you are an African American listening to this podcast, do forgive us in thinking that way, because it's what was fed to us as well about y'all. And on the negative side, what was fed to us about y'all is that y'all are jailbirds, drug addicts, drug pushers. Y'all are murderers that drive by and you just chaotic. Stuff that we see in movies, music, what do you call this? Thug hip hop. Is it thug hip hop? Whatever hip hop that is. We see that. And the perception and the notion, therefore, is that, oh, these people call each other the N word, so that it's okay for me as a South African to call them the N word. So you have to forgive us for that. That's what we were also fed about you. So when somebody, so when somebody increases a price because they heard your accent, don't buy from there. Rather go to an establishment like a mall, supermarket, where such things will not happen. There are laws in this country that regulate against this sort of practice. Another thing that is not part of our culture is negotiations. We don't negotiate. We don't negotiate prices. It's not in our system. We were never taught that. If something is this price, that's exactly how we see it. It is that price. We don't negotiate it. So don't come to South Africa thinking, oh my goodness, I'll be able to negotiate. No. There's no bargaining here. Prices are fixed. If somebody increases the price, leave the store and go elsewhere. That's it. That way you'll be less infuriated and less upset and less feeling that you are being segregated or you are being targeted. Just go to a mall, do your shopping in a mall, or shop online. We got those systems in place here. So I just want to close this podcast by saying that there are opportunities in Africa. The resources that were given to us are still there. Some are even undiscovered yet. As an African American who probably possesses an engineering degree, you may actually be our answer. So don't look the other way because you watched an African American YouTube video who had an unpleasant experience somewhere in Africa. And that discouraged you from thinking of moving to Africa. Do not starve or take away that opportunity from yourself. And I'm not only talking about an engineer here, whether you're a lawyer or in digital environment or a doctor, a nurse, a psychologist, whatever you are, a business person, entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. You may be the answer to Africa's problems, including you as an individual. Including you as an individual. Africa is not perfect. It's not near perfection. But I can tell you one thing about us. We are working every single day to eradicate all the ills in our communities, all the ills in our continent. And we need you to come and help us. And while we are busy eradicating that, we also rise together. There's something that Akon, I can't remember what video it was that I watched of Akon. He said, imagine black NBA players, black football players, black baseball players, athletes, sorry, and everywhere where in music industry or entertainment industry for that matter, all black people left and brought all of that here in Africa. Can you imagine where Africa would be today? Or if all of them decided we are going to start our own in Africa. I thought that was a very profound, thought-provoking comment from him. And probably that's how we need to start thinking. Because I believe the moment you start thinking like that, maybe, just maybe, the US will create laws that prohibits ill treatment of black people. Because they will run away. They will leave. And my biggest fear, together with my African American friends, is that there'll come a time where the United States come to a realization that black people are leaving the US. And so now they're going to use the influence and power to put that to an end. Threaten South Africa, threaten African countries, increase prices for flights, making it impossible for any African American, whether you live above the wealth line or below it, for you to think twice of hopping on that plane and coming to Africa. We suspect that will happen. Maybe not now. It will depend on how many African Americans leave the US per year for them to say, hey, let's put an end to this. Because at the end of the day, those white people still need the black slaves. Underpay them, treat them like shit. They will still need to do that. So when they're seeing an influx, exodusing the US, exodusing the UK, exodusing Canada, exodusing wherever African diasporians are at, they will want to put an end to it by making it impossible to come. So I want to say again, when you come to Africa or you're thinking of moving to Africa, do your research. Do your research. Visit thereafter and visit again. And thereafter, make a decision. Okay? I think I may have covered everything that I wanted to say in this so long podcast. And I hope wherever you are, you don't feel offended by what I'm saying. it's a thought. I stand corrected. And I'm not saying don't create a video and talk about your experience. But the negative part, leave it to the white YouTuber because that's what they will do. They will never see Africa on the positive light. They will never acknowledge what Africans have done to improve their environment, their countries. There's so many great things that you are doing here. So many great things, but they'll never see it. So when you create a video and you add it to that, you are no different from them. And I appreciate the African Americans who say, I will never create a video and say something negative, irrespective of what experience I may have gone through about Africa. We've had enough of that. It's time we showed the positive. But I'm saying, while they're doing that, go online, research, see that Africa is not all roses and unicorns and rainbows, and then make your decision despite knowing that. Okay, but I can tell you, we are fun people, we are loving people, and we will welcome you home with a big hug at the airport. And please, and please, just know this: we love you. We love you so much. We want to protect you from the pain that's been inflicted on you because of your skin color. Come home, see us. You can come and go. We don't mind. As long as you take a break from the pain. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this podcast video, give it a like. Do subscribe. Very important that you subscribe. But liking a video is far more important to the algorithm. It's a matrix that triggers the algorithm to promote my podcast video or video podcast and basically take it to other people who may be interested or probably researching moving to Africa. They may watch this video simply by liking. But I also ask you to click the bell notification after subscribing so that whenever I drop another video podcast, you get notified and hear what's on my thought on that particular video. Please do share this video podcast far and wide. And also, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time with a new one. Goodbye.